Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 8 of Library Access, a Keyforge podcast brought to you by thekeyforge.com. My name is Nick, and I'm here with Alex.
Hey, what's up, everybody?
And Steven.
How's it going to everybody?
Like we mentioned before, our Patreon is live at patreon.com/thekeyforge. So if you like what we do and you want to see more of it, feel free to drop $1 in our tip jar. As of right now, all of that goes to cool prize support for our tournaments that we run every Tuesday on our Discord, which you can get to by going to thekeyforge.com. Actually, there's no link. You can go to keyforgediscord.com, actually, or you can go to our website and then click the little Discord icon. But those are a lot of fun. We do them every Tuesday, and we do a 64-person single elimination Archon. And we'll switch that up to do Swiss and stuff later, but it's been a lot of fun. I don't know if we've talked about it a lot, like we've promoted it on here, but haven't actually discussed it. Unfortunately, I don't participate in them. I really would like to, but since we give away prizes, I feel like that's kind of messed up. But it's really cool to see 64 people, go at it, and it's nice to see to be able to look at that winning deck and know that it holds some value. Because if you have a tournament, however you do it, with 4 people or whatever, there's a possibility that there was another excellent deck that just didn't make it through. They drew poorly or something like that. But when you've got somebody that beats out 6 rounds, and comes out the victor, I guess you could still fall victim to that. Like, good decks could be losing, but a good pilot and a good deck is certainly winning. So it's always been fun to take a look at those decks and see what's winning and why. And then something I've been into personally, and it's a perfect segue into our first topic, I hope, is to take those decks and compare their ADHD ratings and their SAS ratings. The SAS is from Decks of Keyforge, which is a new-ish site. I know I asked if you guys checked it out, but I didn't mention it or promote it. But it's got another metric of kind of measuring decks. And it's a really cool website. It's decksofkeyforge.com. And you can create an account on there, and it's got every deck, 584,195 as of right now, logged in the database. So it's every deck that's been registered, and you can go claim decks as yours. And if you want to, you can flag them as for sale and for trade. And then you have a little option on there to put your email address or your phone number or whatever way you want to be contacted, which I think is really cool. And it'd be really cool if it were just massively widely adopted, which is kind of why I'm talking about it right now. Because that way you see all these people posting in Facebook groups and Reddit and stuff saying, looking for, Gomez the seriously peg-legged. And it's like, man, there's no chance that person's going to see this and be able to, get in touch with you. But with this, if everyone gets on there and starts claiming their stuff, then it gives you a chance of, finding the decks you want. And even not even just for looking up specific ones, but it's got a filter on there. Not as good as Toy Wiz's, because they, as far as I know, they only let you filter by 1 card. But I imagine there's no reason why he can't, or the creator of the site can't implement multiple cards. But you can sort by houses, and you can, filter and arrange by sort by whatever. And it's been really cool. You can specifically pick to only see the for sale or for trade decks. And I reached out to somebody. I haven't ever bought a deck online. I've bought decks in person that somebody brought, and I was like, oh, yeah, sure, I'll give you $10 for that. That'll be fun. But I haven't sought out a cool deck with cool combos that I'm aware of or thought up until recently. I didn't actually buy it because I messaged him about it, and he said, oh, my current high bid is $50. I said, oh, well, I'll give you $55 and I'll send it right now. And he didn't respond for 3 or 4 days. I messaged him again. I said, hey, what's the word? And he said, oh, I got an offer for $250, so I think I'm going to keep it.
Whoa, what was in this deck?
Oof.
Let me find it. It wasn't, I remember it being not $250.
I don't know that any deck is $250. Like Double Horseman that you could probably
Double
flip
Horseman,
for
maybe,
more.
yeah.
Yeah, or Double Time Traveler, on the outside, maybe. But yeah, no, that doesn't seem right to me. But hey, whatever the market will bear in some cases, I can't be mad at somebody's hustle in that regard. If somebody's willing to pay that, that's a lot more Keyforge that you can buy with 250 bones. I'll tell you an interesting thing about Decks of Keyforge is that unlike ADHD ratings, it actually pegged my top 3 decks in SAS rating as the top 3 out of my collection when I added them to decks of Keyforge. Like, it actually identified the 3 that I win with most consistently and that have been sort of my go-to decks if I want to play something competitive. So that's kind of interesting that SAS, power of cards, which is kind of the metric they use, plus synergy kind of worked out in a way that the other systems for rating decks kind of haven't for me.
Yeah, I've noticed that too. My highest winning deck had 90% win rate, has a SAS score of 84. And the other 2 that are the consistent highest winners, 83 and 80%, are at 75 and 79%, or not percent, 75 and 79 SAS. And on the other side of it, I've got my spreadsheet broken up into good decks, new decks, and then for sale decks. And the for sale decks are all, 33%, 20%, 0% as far as win rate goes. And they are all 60%, with the exception of 1 or 2. SAS, which I don't think was the case originally. So if you looked your decks up on there and you didn't quite agree with what you found, the guy came out, I think it was on Reddit or Facebook, and said, hey, we did a pretty significant update in how we calculate this stuff. Check it out again. And that's like the scores I've got going on here. And I assume the scores that you got as well. So it is interesting. The other metric, and I don't have them all filtered out, but I have noticed from ADHD, the consistency seems to be pretty spot on. The higher the consistency, the better, the greater the win rate. When you get to 0 and you're starting to get a negative, then it's not, in my personal experience, not a great deck. That being said, I'm sure there are poor rated decks that win really well, but I don't imagine there's a lot of good rated decks that perform poorly.
Yeah, I'm still not a fan of any of the rating systems, and I've looked at SAS and I've looked at AD, and I still feel that they're super arbitrary. Like, I'm happy that you're looking at your decks; they got good numbers, and it was able to identify the better decks. But I don't know if there's a way really to calculate the decks in a vacuum, more or less. I don't know. I think it's good for the game that people have a frame of reference, but I definitely think that the deck power is only 1% of the game, and not percent, but using your own deck piloting skill is definitely another big part of the game.
I would agree with you to a degree, Stephen, but I do think that this introduces an interesting possibility with the Crucible, which we're all such big fans of, which is because we can look at on decks of Keyforge what the highest rated decks are. They put them right on the front page. What was the one you mentioned earlier, Nick? So-and-so, the seriously peg-legged or what have you?
Gomez, the seriously peg-legged, is at 102.
Exactly, yeah. You could literally pop him onto the Crucible and play with it and see what happens. See, does this carry through? Is this actually all it's cracked up to be? Which I think is an interesting aspect of this. I know there's a lot of people look down on net decking, but there are good applications for it if you want to find them. And that's one where I think you could actually, see if the proof is in the pudding, right?
Mm-hmm. And as far as I'll mention this about net decking, if you want to net deck, I don't care. But you and everyone around you will have a way better time if you go into a Discord, for example. That's where I find a lot of my games, and say, hey, who wants to play my net deck? And you'll find somebody there that'll say oh yeah, sure. They either have a net deck of their own they want to play with, the deck they want to test, or they just want to know that they're playing the most broken deck they can find. Net decking is okay, but I feel like it's fair to I had a guy tell me actually in Crucible, in the chat before we started, he said, I found this deck online, and I said, okay, cool, let's do it. I think that's a good way to go about doing it. If you want to test that out. But yeah, I don't know. I totally understand what you're saying. There, as of right now, there isn't any metric to even, I won't even say 100%, but even 98% gauge whether a deck will be good or bad. It's certainly possible because you can, I couldn't pretend to know how to do it, but you can plug all that data into a computer, and a computer can recognize combos and how well cards will interact with each other. I imagine it would take a lot of programming to make something like that work. But the SAS especially, I guess both of them really, but the I don't know, maybe not the SAS, maybe I'm meaning more ADHD. I don't know what I'm trying to say. There these metrics, these programs that are, gauging how well a deck does, scoring a deck. I think there's got to be some truth to them.
Oh, I definitely agree. There's got to be something in the data there, but
right. Well, it's using. I'll give an example. I have a deck that I thought was amazing until I played it more, and then I realized what it's missing is it has absolutely 0 steal and absolutely 0 capture. So it's great for racing, but that wouldn't be terribly difficult for a computer to look at and say, look, this deck is not going to do well. It's going to get rated poorly because of this. What it would be interesting, here's a free idea, whichever one of you guys wants to steal this. If it's possible, find a way for it to print out some sort of response under, here's your deck rating and here's why. Keep it real slim, and it might already do this. Maybe I haven't done my homework. But if it said, 102 SAS, and it's because, poor amber control, something like that, because I think people will take it more seriously, if they're not willing to look into it, if they're getting like a word readout of why it's rated the way it is.
I definitely could see that. I would definitely take it more seriously if it gave me like flat out, like just this is the reason why it's being so low, and here's what the computer's responding to why it's so low. Like I said, there is definitely some truth to it. I just don't see that these rating systems are the end all be all of what makes a deck good or what scores a deck good or bad.
One of the things I think we might need to consider at a certain point is that although I think we're sort of conditioned to think about, okay, a competitive deck, one that I want to try and win tournaments with, or, dominate my local scene with, has to have, a little bit of everything. It's got to have the artifact removal. It's got to have amber control. It's got to have board clear. It's got to have, all that stuff, steal, capture, et cetera, et cetera. And at a certain point, because of the way Keyforge is put together, maybe there's a possibility that just like there are no decks that do literally everything, and you kind of have to accept the fact that even your finest deck, the one that seems like it's an A in all areas, is just going to get stomped by another deck that's very specialized in the one area, doesn't have an answer. That's a thing I've been thinking about a lot, because some of my best decks I lose miserably with against certain other decks, and they just don't have an answer. That doesn't necessarily mean that those perfect decks aren't out there, but I think they're probably going to be pretty rare if they do in fact exist. In terms of your strongest decks, are you aware of what they are deficient in? Do you know that there are going to be things that are going to mess you up when they hit the board, if they hit the board, and that you look out for when you look at your opponent's Archon card?
Oh, 100%. I've got a deck that runs 3 cooperative hunting and a ridiculous amount of creatures. I'm sure I've talked about this on the podcast before. Like, I will always be on the lookout for something that is able to purge creatures just straight out of the game. There's not any amber guarding in that deck, so I'm able to really keep control of the board, and that's how I win the game, is by the race. I have a very big board, hit him as hard as I can for a couple turns, kind of clear it out, and then just go on the reap spree and just, get as much amber as I can. And if he's got a bait and switch, I'm going to get a bait and switch. I mean, it is definitely something I realize that my deck is deficient in, but with one of the natures of this game, I can't slot in a card that would help with that deficiency, which is a good thing in this game, and I do definitely enjoy it. But yeah, it is one thing that you have to definitely look out for with the decks in general, is that, and I feel that this is maybe even a balancing act by the algorithm, is that the decks are made specifically with a couple deficiencies just to kind of keep it in range. And every once in a while, you get a deck that slips out of that and, either just doesn't have a deficiency whatsoever. And it's one of that 5% of best decks, and, it's totally off the bell curve. Or on the opposite end, it's one of the 5% of worst decks because it's off the bell curve, because it just, can't do anything.
Nick, you've talked a couple times about your 10 out of 10 deck, like your objectively best deck. Does it have any weaknesses that you're aware of? Does it have any things that it just doesn't have answers for?
No. Honestly, it really is a really great deck, and I'm lucky that I got it and kind of hung on to it by accident. It was one of the first that I opened, and I think I lost with it a bunch at first, so it just was uninteresting to me. And thankfully, I didn't trade it away. But no, it's got it's really got everything I need. It's got board clear, it's got capture, it's got steal, it's got, bait and switch. It's kind of shaped what I look for in a deck. Like I think I mentioned this before. Because of this deck, I have a core set of cards that I haven't found yet, at least for a reasonable price. But when I'm, hunting on Toy Wiz and stuff like that, I want it to have Logos and Shadows, and then the other house can be pretty much whatever. I really don't care. This one has Sanctum, which it has played a huge role in it, but no, is probably not a very fun answer. But almost every other deck I've had does feel that way. But this one, it feels like in the case of, me versus the deck, this deck is a better deck than I am a pilot. Like the deck, I feel like the deck wins more than I win with this deck. So
does that make it less fun to play?
No, because it's definitely not fun to play when I play the same people over and over again, and it's definitely not fun to play when I'm playing new people, because I really don't get any joy out of just stomping or anything like that. So I bring a big pile of decks when I come to my LGS, and I pull those out. But that doesn't bother me when I'm playing, when I'm playing in a tournament, I'm playing last round, something like that. And the person you're up against is crazy good too. And then I need all the help I can get at that point. So anything that deck can give me, I'm happy to take. I don't know if we mentioned this on the show. We might have. So if we did, I apologize. We can just rehash it, I guess. But I saw it on Facebook. Somebody brought it up. And what reminded me was Steven mentioned something similar to it. What would you say is I don't know how to word it, the percentage of deck versus player? Do you think it's 50% deck that matters and 50% pilot, or 25-75? How would you personally rate that? What the factors are and how important they are?
I feel it's like 60-40. And
60-40 what?
In both, honestly. Sometimes the deck is really good that you can kind of let off on the piloting a little bit, and you can make a couple mistakes, and it's just a good enough deck that it can survive on its own like that. And some decks need a bit more help, and you need to be a better pilot to run. But it depends on the deck. But I would put the average around 60-40. It is definitely not a 50-50 split. In my opinion, there's too wide of a breadth of decks that you're playing and that you're playing against, that in a collectible card game where you're able to have deck building, it definitely would be more 50% what your deck is and 50% what your piloting is, because you're not able to change any of the cards here, and you kind of are going in a little bit random with your deck and random against your opponent's deck as well. It really requires knowledge of the game and knowledge of your deck and what the weaknesses are, which is definitely a piloting skill. But the deck has to stand up to be able to go up against a lot of people like that. So
you said 60-40 in both directions?
Yeah. But like
that would be 50-50.
No. Like a single deck would be like, take every single deck in general. Some of them require better piloting. Some of them are just a better deck. Like, I don't think that anything is going to be 50-50. That's what I mean by that.
I would agree that it's variable, because there are some decks that you simply have to be a good pilot to win with. And those are the decks that are, generally speaking to me, more fun to play, because they're the ones that reveal their secrets to you over time, or that have weird little plays in them that you don't consider at first until they actually happen in actual gameplay. And then they become part of your repertoire as you play the game. For me, I have a deck called the Misses of Innerham, where one of the earliest weird tricks I discovered with it was its tendency to board clear with Champion's Challenge and pair that up with Loot the Bodies. And so you would get these turns where you would just, that's an obvious combo, but it's not something that occurred to me until such a time as I was actually playing it consistently. And that shaped how I played with the deck. I keep my board small. I wait for that combo to come around, which isn't unlikely because they're small decks, right? They're only 36 cards. You don't have to dig for them. You can wait for them to show up. And, you know, sometimes that works out for me great, and sometimes it works out for me very poorly, but it's been a game winner for me more than it's been a game loser as a strategy. So that's a deck where I definitely feel like, having played with it for a little while and having given it to other folks to try out and play with it, I've noticed that the people who play with it more frequently, myself, people who've tried it more than once, definitely get a better feel for it, and then it becomes the pilot, not the deck necessarily at all. The deck is great. It's super cool. It's super fun. But until you have that experience piloting it, you won't be able to make anything out of it. And then, you know, much like Steven said, some decks are just forgiving. They have so much in them. They've got so much amber control. They've got so much burst in them. They've got so many ways to lock down your opponent, or, you know, delay your opponent for a turn, or, you know, play tempo games with how fast the game is going, that you can be forgiven for making mistakes. And you will make mistakes with them, because oftentimes I think those decks can actually encourage kind of sloppy play, right? I'm super guilty of it. My hottest deck, you know, I'll take it out on the battlefield and I feel like it's already at an advantage because I've won with it so much. And so I'm not keeping my head in the game, and I'm relying on the deck to make up for my deficiencies as a pilot. I think one of the great things about Keyforge is that if you have an avenue to play suboptimal decks, it makes you a better player of the game. So yeah, I agree with Steven in that I think that it's a little bit of both depending on the deck.
Okay. I'll try to narrow it down, and I'll ignore like the exceptions of, you know, the really, really amazing decks, stuff like that. I would say either 50-50 or like 25-75, with 75% being the deck. And I say that because, you know, it kind of depends who you're going up against. I could take a bad deck and win against somebody who's, you know, not good at the game, but that, like, it doesn't matter how good of a pilot you are. If your deck's bad, it's bad. I don't think, you know, especially, I guess context does matter a lot, you know, who you're playing against and that stuff. But that's kind of the point, is that it's supposed to be just like a vague overall, all encompassing kind of number. And I could be totally wrong, but from my personal experience, I feel like the deck is more important than the pilot. You know, it doesn't matter how great a pilot is and how well they can use it. It's like I'm trying to think about something to compare it to. If you give the best race car driver in the world a Pinto, he can only push it as far as it'll go. Like he's only able to use it, you know, what's in that deck. And there are some decks. Yeah, I think the majority of decks, maybe that's not fair. There are a fair amount of decks that just don't come equipped with what you need to win. They just are, you know, super weak on amber, super weak on your board, you know, whatever it is, however you should win with it. I would say a safe bet would be 50-50 at least. I don't think it's, you know, 75% pilot, 25% deck personally, but I could be totally wrong. I was curious. I wanted to touch on it earlier, but I didn't want to branch too far off the topic. Do you guys have, and I'm really asking this for like very selfish reasons, because I either want to confirm what I think or I want to shed this poor practice that I have. Do you guys have must-have cards that you look for? You know, somebody says, "Hey, you want to buy this deck? You want to trade this deck?" Do you look at that? You know, you see a house that you like. Do you have a must-have card in any one house that if a deck doesn't have, maybe you won't not buy it, but maybe it becomes much, much, much less interesting to you?
I'll say that my reason for loving Untamed is key cheating. So if it Untamed deck doesn't have key cheating, it better be very strong in the other things that Untamed can do, because that is the one thing with Untamed where I need to have it. I want to have it. It's the game winner. Not so much with Shadows. Like at first, obviously everybody thinks of bait and switch, but I mean, I have lots of Shadows decks without bait and switch, and they do okay. Some of them do very well. I genuinely think though that the key cheating is the thing with Untamed that gets my motor running. What about you, Steven?
I think it really depends on each of the houses. I really like cards that change the game or change the rules of the game. So, like in Shadows, the Sting. I love the Sting. I've seen people debate about its worth and how good or how bad it is, but like for me, it's the card that I look for because it really just changes how you play the game. In these, Annihilation Ritual or A Fair Game are the two ones that I really want to look for, because again, they change how you play each deck. My favorite, though, like outside of all of them, is still going to be Mars with a Zookeeper. And it's a little bit less that it doesn't change the game as much as such as the other cards do. But the fact that I'm able to just go and be like, this card is now mine, and I tuck it away underneath my Archon in the archives, and it just sits there for the rest of the game. And there's not really anything you can do about it. And it's just one of those neat effects that doesn't really happen in a lot of other games. So I definitely try to pull that as much as I can in there. But I've got a few key cards I look for in each of the houses that I'm like, yeah, this deck definitely interests me more because it's there. But that being said, those cards aren't always consistent and will sometimes do as good for you as it does for your opponent. Definitely a key one is Speed Sigil and Evasion Sigil. They both help your opponent more than they help you most of the time. So, like, they're fun cards. They change the rules of the game. They fit all the criteria that I'm looking for. And I do enjoy them, don't get me wrong. But because the fact that they're a extremely powerful symmetrical effect, they definitely require a lot more skill. And I'm not going to down on myself, but sometimes it feels like I don't have the skill to run them yet. So they're still on my watch list, but they're a little bit lower. But really, as long as the deck has good synergies and is able to play well, like, it definitely interests me. Just if I'm able to change the rules of the game by putting on a card, oh, you better believe I'm looking for that deck right there.
Personally, I'll break it up into two categories because I have some that I need and some that I like or want. The only one I really look for is if it's got shadows. I think for me, it needs to have bait and switch. I'm sure there's a billion people out there that don't care for it or don't want it or whatever. So I don't mean like if you have shadows, you need to have bait and switch. But personally, if I'm going to have shadows in my deck, I think bait and switch is almost the whole point of it for me. Shadows on its own without it just doesn't. I feel like I could replace it with more valuable houses and cards for my personal play style. But out of cards I want, if it's got logos, I really, until I get sick of it, I really want it to have library access. And
the name of the show.
That's right. Library access. And with library access, I want phase shift and wild wormhole. But at a certain point, I start to get like too deep into it, and it becomes more and more unlikely that that combination will pop up. And I'd really love to have time traveler and library access and all the ones I mentioned previously. There's also in Sanctum, I really love Glorious Few, and I really love Numquid the Fair. Glorious Few gets you 1 amber for every creature your opponent controls in excess of you, so you can let if you want to play, if you want to really play a single aspect of your deck, let your opponent build up this crazy big board, get all confident, gain 10 amber, 12 amber, whatever it is, however much they have. And then you play Numquid the Fair, which is destroy an enemy creature, repeat this card's effect as long as your opponent still controls more creatures than you. So especially if you can get both of those out, you get all that amber and then just send them to the Shadow Realm. Those are the cards I look for currently. I like Miasma. It's not necessary for me, but it's one of those that I check for it, but it won't turn me away from a deck if it doesn't have it. And I need to. I guess you guys answered. I personally know that I have a core set of decks and definitely a core set of houses that I like, and all of my play typically revolves around those. Do you guys personally have any houses that you're not paying enough attention to that you either by choice or by accident?
Brobnar, for sure. Oh, by far. I think I own 3 of my decks. It is a very little amount of Brobnar, and it's one of those kind of that I sleep on it a lot, and I feel that the more times I get punched in the face by Flame Fist and Gengar Chieftain, the more I'm like, okay, Brubner's definitely got some legs underneath it, but it just doesn't fit my play style, so I kind of sleep on it a lot. But yeah, no, I think out of all the houses, I definitely sleep on Brobnar, and I probably overhype Mars in the opposite direction, because Mars is the best house and all the pieces fall together.
Have you ever made a key abduction work, Steven?
I've made a double key abduction work. It was glorious.
Wow, that is a lot of Mars creatures.
No, it was archives.
I gotcha. I gotcha.
Yeah.
In response to your question, I kind of have a little bit of everything that I like to play with. For the longest time, it was Dis. Like, I just didn't have any good or effective Dis decks, and they weren't fun to play. And then I pulled one that had 4 Arises in it, and instantly I started playing that deck all the time because it was such a ridiculous deck to play with, because it was just constantly clearing the board, killing all the guys, bringing everybody back. Oh, you've killed them again? I bring them back again. And it really made me fall in love with Dis, even though it's not much better than a 50-50 deck, if that, in terms of win-loss. So yeah, Dis is probably the one that traditionally I neglected the most, but now have a lot of affection for, at least when playing that deck specifically. But I think that as a deck, or as a house rather, it has a lot of tricks that I haven't sussed out, and that's just a lack of having good, strong, or varied Dis house layout in the decks that I have Dis in them.
I'm kind of with you on Brobnar. I actively avoid Mars, and I think I avoid Mars the most, and then Brobnar is a close second. I think I see more value for my playstyle in Brobnar, but even then, it's not super common for me to come across a deck with a powerful Brobnar. From what I've seen, and that might be my fault just because I haven't played it enough to know what I'm looking at. I don't play a lot of Dis. What I really don't play a lot of is Untamed. And that's the one that kind of happens by accident. I just don't have a lot of decks with it, or a lot of good combo, decks with good house combinations that I like that have forced me to play it. I don't know. I neglect a lot. I kind of find what works, and then I either stick with that deck and play it, in person and online, or I will seek out decks that have similar combos and similar play styles, because it's what's worked for me so well. It'll be really interesting to see. I'm kind of waiting for my deck to get chained so I can be forced to play something different, and I've kind of started. I think it was a month ago or something. I went to a double elimination. You bring 2 decks. When one loses, you can't use it anymore. And it woke me up that I had to bring another good deck, and I hadn't really determined what another good deck of mine was. So that caused me to. I've talked about it before. It caused me to really sit down and really flush out my my spreadsheet and see what and actually chart what works and what doesn't. And now I'm kind of getting to the point where I've got 3 that are above 80. Well, it looks like I've got another one that has 100%, but with 4 wins. So that will change. But I'm figuring out what's good and bad. And it's forcing me to, and actually how I do it, bring it back around full circle to our first thing, is I charted all the SAS scores. And this is kind of what I've been doing from, since I've really dug into the scoring. When somebody wants to sell me a deck or trade me a deck, at the store, I look up the score, and that's the first thing I go by. If it has a bad score, I don't want it. If it's got a 65, no thank you. And it's possible I'll miss out on a really good deck, but I'd actually, here's a little challenge. If one of you has a deck that rates really, really, really poorly, 60, 65, whatever, I don't think I've seen a 60. Post it in the comments and tell us about it. Tell us your win rate, stuff like that. Because legitimately like to be proven wrong and know that I can, not dismiss those poor decks. But I've been rating those decks, and if they, do well 75 to 80, I'll go ahead and pick them up and then try them out from there. But that's helped me. I had a spreadsheet with 40 decks, and there was just no feasible way to get through them. Not in a fun way. I was finding myself doing it like, work. I'd play one game with one deck, and then I'd move right on to the next one. And, I feel like you have to play a deck 4 times, I would say 5 times to get a read on it, both in terms of the score it gets and just your personal experience. Even if you lost a bunch with it, after 5 games, you can tell whether the deck has potential or not, or if you want to contradict, your own personal win-loss with it. But I charted them all out like that, and then I just took anything that rated 60 and just threw it in the for sale. And I took it to the store, and I just opened up this giant, one of those long white deck boxes, and just pulled them all out on the table. And our store does a $5 buy-in, and then you get that $5 buy-in back in store credit. So everyone at the end of the night has these little $5 tokens. And I just said, here are all these decks, $5. And, people flock to the table, and, everyone finds something they like, and, everyone's happy. They get a deck for $5. I get $5. By the end of the night, I got $30, and
that's 3 new decks.
Yeah, it's worked pretty well. I did get in a little bit of trouble. I knew it was a rule from when I played like as a kid that you're not supposed to buy sell in the store. But he came over and
it's poor taste. Yeah,
I guess, but I understand several reasons why it's the case. I'm not oblivious to it. I'm not arguing with it, but if I had a store, I would kind of pick and choose who I enforce that with. Like me and that guy, we were there the only ones for the first, month of Keyforge, and then we're the only ones that are there like literally every time. Like he can look at us and tell like, these guys aren't going to throw hands over Keyforge decks. Like, they can do their $5 deals. That's fine. But I get it. You got to enforce it across the board.
I was going to say, if you want to go back a couple of weeks, Alex and I were talking about a deck that he had, Peak Toes. And that's a little bit higher on the SAS. It's a 70 SAS. I just looked it up on Decks of Keyforge. And I don't know if you've been playing it, but until it became a invalid deck on Crucible, because everyone's been trying it out after that episode. I was testing around and playing with it and seeing how I like it. And I don't know if you've gotten relatively anything else with it, Alex, but going with what you were saying about the SAS, like it's a 70 SAS. That's not terrible. It's middle of the road.
I would say 70 is on the lower end. I haven't seen any that have been 60. Well, I have one for 60, and all the rest of mine sit at 65 as the lowest.
Okay, so that makes it even better. What I was going to say for my case, yes. But I've have a extremely good win rate with Peak Toes on the Crucible right now. And again, I haven't played it too much since it's only been a couple weeks, and I kind of, after it got invalidated, I kind of stopped touching it. But I was at 10 wins and only 3 losses with it.
Yeah, I think that was one of those classic cases of I didn't know how to win with it, so I thought it was bad. And then have been proven wrong since.
Yeah. And I think I beat you with it a couple times.
Yeah, I think you did.
But yeah, and it's just one of those cases where like, yeah, and this is the reason why I take the ratings in stride. They're good benchmarks, but they're not the end all be all. But it's definitely one of those things where like Boss H Peak Toes would be a deck I'd be happy just to drop in a tournament and be like, all right, let's play it. And it's not because it's absolutely, it has nothing really insane in it. Like definitely 2 Psychic Networks has been the absolute star though, because I've just been able to eat people's amber like it's delicious. I don't know.
Ice cream?
Yeah, I tried not to say ice cream again. I really did. We went back to ice cream.
Hey, can I ask you guys a question that kind of pairs up earlier with Nick's question about, is there something you're looking for when you look at a deck that you might be interested in getting a hold of, or when you open up a deck for the first time? And this is at the risk of being slightly negative, but are there any cards that bum you out when you see them? Because I have a couple, and there's a theme to them. The two for me are Key Abduction and Key of Darkness, because I have never gotten them to go off in any of the decks that I have with them, and they just feel like dead weight in my hand whenever I have them, and they're almost an instant discard just because it's very hard to get them to work properly. And I'm sure there's lots of people out there who've won games with them, but when I see them in a deck list, I'm just like, couldn't you have been something else? Couldn't you have been a Zookeeper? Couldn't you have been like a Miasma or a Bait and Switch or a One Last Job or something? Why Key of Darkness? Why Key Abduction? Anything like that for you guys?
I have two answers. It happens way more frequently on Crucible. And sometimes I don't look for them. Sometimes I don't look at deck lists. But you can tell when they play them, the kind of play they're doing, or if they pop out, two virtuous works in a row or something like that. I get bummed about little trends like that make me think like, you either have a crazy good deck or you don't have a deck. But in person, I think the only thing. And I try not to share deck lists in person. I think I mentioned this before. If somebody mentions it, I'm happy to oblige, but I'll try to kind of slip past it, just because I think it's more fun to go in blind. You don't look at each other's cards in Magic or anything. But in the case, in the context in which I look at their deck list, I think Bait and Switch is probably the biggest one. Bait and Switch or is it Drumble? Just I look for like the real big capture you guys, depending on what house they're playing. Bait and Switch is the biggest one, not because them taking half my amber particularly bothers me, but it's because it just totally disrupts the flow of the game. It's like when somebody puts down the Sting, like you play kind of differently. It's just knowing that it's there. I might have a crazy amber generation deck, and just I might lose because I don't go as hard as I could. Just because it's somewhere lurking in that pile of 36 right there. But aside from that, there's nothing that really frustrates me to see. I don't know. I'm really trying to think. There's nothing worth mentioning, I guess. Somebody will play a card that on a deck list, it doesn't really bother me, but it'll be in conjunction with a taunt next to it, or some upgrade or something that makes it just exceptionally powerful, and things like that bother me. Just because it's not because it's cheap or anything, but just because it seems almost hopeless for me. It's just like, oh boy, like, yeah, I know how this goes. Like, now I can't do any of this until I take care of this, and the likelihood of me being able to take care of this. Certain combos, like if they have, Witch of the Eye, and they're able to pull something really crazy back over and over again, and I don't have anything to, to deal with their cards without just getting screwed over and over again. That's the best I can think of.
Ooh, I'm gonna spit out 3 Mars cards, and this is mostly because like Mars is the one I have the most experience with and what I look for. But the 3 cards that I absolutely do not want to see in Mars is EMP Blast, because it just stuns my own creatures. And I, in the same exact vein, Phosphorus Stars, which stuns every non-Mars creature and gives you way too many chains for a terrible effect. Both those cards are just dead draws to me, more or less. Like EMP Blast definitely has some use, being it gives you an amber and it destroys every artifact in play. So sometimes it's worth it for me to stun all my Mars creatures, or if I don't have any Mars creatures out, like there are definitely situations where EMP Blast comes into play, but it's one of those cards where I just get it in my hand and I'm like, all right, I'm probably going to discard this. And, I'll take a look at the board state. Sometimes it's played, sometimes it's not. Phosphorus Stars almost never gets played. And I'm just like, if it was maybe 1 chain, I definitely play it. But stun each non-Mars creature, gain 2 chains, just feels so painful for kind of a little of an effect. And the other one that I feel is on the fence is like Custom Virus. And it's a rare Mars card, artifact, Omni, sacrifice Custom Virus, purge a creature from your hand, destroy each creature that shares a trait with that purged creature. And I love it in mirror matches, and it's pretty much just an amber in every other match. And there's a few on the other sides. I know I've talked a lot of trash about Epic Quest on the podcast, and I was very kindly gifted a really good Epic Quest deck by one of our listeners, and in that one specific deck, man, I love Epic Quest. But yeah, if I look at a second deck and I'll see Epic Quest, and there's 2 or 3 knights, and I'm just like, okay, I guess it's a good artifact that I can, maybe try and put out and bait some artifact destruction or stack my archive for a good turn a little bit later down the road. Like it has more of a poker play in that case. But that's definitely like one of the cards that I'm just like, I could do without it. And then a lot of like the specific silver bullet cards, Imperial Trader, Take That Smarty Pants, I think is the Brobnar card that does it against Logos. Like the one that it gives you an amber, which is cool, but then it only has an effect against one specific house. I feel very nil on. Like they're great when they fire, and they're an amber when they don't. So like there's definitely a few cards that I can go through and be like, okay. They don't get me excited for anything, but like they're not bad cards. They're all situational, but their situation is just so specific that I'm like, okay, I'll. It's a card. It's in my deck slot. I'll try and make it work, or I discard it and draw a new card. So I don't know. I kind of long-winded that answer a lot, but there's definite cards that I'm just like, no, I'm good, thanks.
It is the most frustrating feeling in the world when somebody actually gets off of phosphorus stars on you.
Oh no, I love it. I will happily clap my hands and be like, you got me. Good job.
Yeah, well, when I say the most frustrating feeling in the world, it's mostly just because I've never been able to use it effectively. So when somebody else gets it on me, I'm like, come on, phosphorus stars?
Yeah,
you're kidding me.
I've got off once or twice when it was extremely beneficial for me, and then probably like 5 or 6 times where it's been slightly beneficial for me. And the rest of the times, I'm just like, this is not worth 2 chains. Into the trash bin you go.
Yeah, chains bother me a little less now than they used to. I think it's because I have a couple decks that just, they're super chain heavy. They just, every card. It's not every card, obviously, but there's a lot of cards in that particular deck that just feed me chains, and I can either resist it and slow my play down by a whole lot, or I can just, say screw it and you just kind of embrace it. And I've never been at a point where I've not been able to draw 2 cards. So I don't know. If typically I try to stay in a situation where I can just unload as many cards as in my hand, unless something is specifically calling for a certain house, or if I have a, particularly powerful board state that I need to deal with before it, gets wiped away next turn for some reason, I usually opt for the hand or the house in which I have the most cards in my hand. So especially with that, I try to throw out as many cards from my hand of that house that I can and draw up as many new cards as possible. So that 5 versus 6 isn't devastating to me quite yet.
So do you mind if I ask a kind of like a lightning round question for you? Because you brought up, holding on to some cards until you can have that big, hand where you can offload everything. How many turns do you want to keep a good card in your hand? Like a card that can very much like turn the tide of a game, like a bait and switch or stuff like that. Like, is there holding onto a card too long? Is there?
I think it depends on the cards, and I don't have a big list of them. Like I know it when I see it, and I think context matters, obviously, but I'll try to give a not boring answer. Bait and switch, I will always hold on to. I will never discard it. Library access, I will always hold on to, and when I get library access, depending on who I'm playing and what the stakes are, I usually try to play. I'm trying to build up for a library access play, and I'll try to get 4 logos cards in my hand at least, and be able just to like spit them all out at once. Because if not, it's a real fizzle out thing for me. And some decks that I have library access in, the logos. So just, the gift they keep on giving with, their immediate amber, and that each card lets you, do something really wild. So I think, context is obviously super important. I'm trying to think of like a more boring card that would still be super useful. Miasma is a good one. Maybe Miasma is not a good one because it has an amber. It's really tricky to give this answer because the context is so incredibly important, for each card. But I guess I did answer it with the bait and switch. I'll hold on to bait and switch forever. I will never discard it. Miasma, I'll see if I'm going to need it. If I feel like the game is an even match or if it's going in their favor, I'll hang on to it until I need it. If it's, turn 2 and they have 0 amber and I've got a cool shadows play, I'll throw it down just to get that amber and, try to build myself up. That's kind of what it is. I will get rid of cards. I guess I shouldn't be looking at it by card, but I will get rid of useful cards if I either desperately need to draw that extra card, or if I can kind of sacrifice that really great card just to get that single amber. If I'm about to be at 6, or if the game's, going really well in my favor. If I have 2 keys and they have 0, I might not hang on to that library access. The bait and switch I probably still would, just because it might, there's, I don't know. That's a really good question, and I'm sorry I guess it's a shitty answer, but what about you guys?
I will hold on to a key charge if I have 2 keys because that's the game winner. Oftentimes and in the decks that I have it in, I'm looking for that burst turn where I can get it down and have that be it. So I will hold on to that. And we've all had those games where it's like the epic last key where things are going fine. And then suddenly, just due to removal and people not being able to get stuff back and people playing cards that, just take amber off the table and out of each other's reserves, et cetera, you just get that final key that takes forever to get out. And I've had enough of those experiences that I will hold on to a key charge in those scenarios. I don't generally feel the need to hold on to it if I get it in my first hand. Like, no, come on. Unless there's absolutely a chance that I'm going to play it within 2 turns, then no, not worth it. But yeah, that's the one thing that I feel like I'm always holding on to, especially in those late game moments. But bait and switch I'll hold on to for a little bit, but if it doesn't look like it's going to be that kind of game, like I'm just consistently ahead on amber or what have you, then I'll chuck it. There's a few good examples. Steven, what are you saying about this?
I hate holding on to cards. Flat out. There's some definite exceptions. Key charge near the end of the game is definitely one of them. Like a couple of the Mars cards that require you to have Mars creatures or reveal cards to draw. Like those are definite like situational ones. But I would much rather rip through my deck and get the second chance to see those cards. Like in a 36 card deck, with the approximation that every card is above average on a power level. Because I'm assuming that you're bringing a really good deck, and I'm assuming tournament play when I say this. Every card is probably on either right on the average line or an above average card. What's better than playing that card once? Playing it twice. And like I said, there are situations where I will hang on to a card. Like if I got key charged near the bottom of my deck, I'll hang on to it and not shuffle that back in. Bait and switch, again, if I have it near the end of the game, in the decks that I have bait and switch, I only tend to play it once. And I tend to play it knowing full well when I need to play it and to keep my amber kind of low when that happens. But yeah, the only one that I would really say I consistently hang on to is library access. And for obvious reasons of like, I'll just, draw an additional 6 cards this turn, 5 cards, even like 3 or 4 cards. It's still really strong. And Battlefleet and Mars is the exact same way. I'll hang on to a Battlefleet for probably longer than I honestly should. And sometimes if the game's going kind of weird, I'll play a battle fleet for 1 or 2, pull what I can, hope for the best, and just keep on going. But yeah, I hate holding on to cards. I will never hold on to 2 cards. That is 100% fact. I will, if I have 2 cards that are in my hand, like if I have library access and a battle fleet, I will look at my hand and I will get rid of the one I think is least likely to fire soon. And there's been times where I've thrown away library access for that very reason. And my opponents look at me like I'm absolutely bonkers. And I'm just like, like it's just one of those things where I'd much rather get through that deck as quickly as I can and start replaying the cards, because a card is more valuable the more copies of it in a deck you have. And if this was a deck building game, like, there's a certain amount of copies of each card you can have in a deck for consistency. The closest thing to that consistency I can get in Keyforge is shuffle my deck. Let's do it again. It's the reason why I love Reverse Time. Reverse Time is one of the strongest cards in the game by far. And
it's one of the wackiest.
Yeah, I didn't realize it when I first read it, and I was just like, okay, it just swaps the two. It's not anything, anything too crazy. It gets you to the end of the deck faster. It's definitely a good card, but I never thought it was the absolute best card until I saw it being played with a couple decks, and they were just being able to pull off these ridiculous strings of combos and I'm just like, okay, nope, you've made me a believer. I love this card. It's great. I might go so far as to say it's the strongest card in the game. I'm gonna get a lot of hate for that. I can already feel the pitchforks and torches coming. But yeah, because of the fact that you're able to recycle your deck so fast, I think that is honestly probably the strongest card in the game right now. And of course, this might be just my meta that I play in, and the people that I play against, and the randomness I get from Crucible. But man, it also goes back to one of those cards that kind of changes the rules of the game for a little while.
Yeah.
So, and that might be also why I might be overhyping this. I don't think I'm overhyping this. I would drop money that, like, if you looked at consistently good decks that have logos, you're going to see library access and reverse time as like one, two, throw time traveler in 1, 2, or 3. They just allow you to do some crazy bonkers kind of stuff, and I love them.
Yeah, no, definitely. Reverse Time is a favorite card for me for logos. One, because it lets you just cycle your deck so incredibly fast. However, there are situations in which I have definitely screwed myself with it, where I played it early enough in the game or too late in the game, and it didn't do anything for me. And a couple of times where I had played through a couple of good combos, and then I played it, and then it just didn't come up in the right order for me, and I was left with dead hands, and it was awful. But I mean, that's the exception rather than the rule. It is a ridiculously powerful card in most contexts.
I mean, that's Keyforge in a nutshell. Like, yeah. you got to embrace the random.
That and a wild wormhole, baby.
Do you guys have? I'm sure we've talked about this, and it seems like a boring topic, but if we've already talked about it once, I feel like it's way more of an appropriate discussion now. Now that you've played the games for some months and you're presumably pretty good at it, do you have a favorite house, and how easy is it for you to pick that house as your favorite?
Mars. Done. Next. I mean, I've talked about it multiple times on here, and it's been definitely one of the houses that I have become most accustomed to. It's zany, it's crazy, it's got the cards that just really, they require so much support from other Mars cards, and sometimes from like Martians Make Bad Allies requires you to not have good Mars cards in hand. But just the effects that they do, the flavor that Mars has, and I really feel like every single card, with the exception of stupid Phosphorus Stars that can go burn in the discard pile, that card is the Shadow Realm. It belongs in the Shadow Realm forever. But yeah, Mars just has all these amazing effects that, and again, sometimes it really requires Mars to have Mars on the field. Most of them require Mars to have Mars on the field. But as long as you can get that ball rolling, Mars is Mars is almost unstoppable in most situations, as long as that snowball is started.
I'm an Untamed guy. I really love Untamed for the key cheating I mentioned earlier, for cards like Fertility Rite, for Fuzzy Gruen, for the Witches. Like it's got so much inside of it, and different Untamed decks play so differently from each other and can do different and interesting things. I have one deck that consistently does a trick because it has a bunch of cooperative huntings and a bunch of save the packs where I can clear out all of my opponent's creatures just by doing 1 damage to them and then hitting a save the pack where it destroys every damaged creature.
Mm-hmm.
So, you get out a hunting witch and maybe a witch of the eye and maybe a Niffleape, and then you play down 2 against a wall of sanctums, get past their armor for 1 point of damage and hit that save the pack. That is a great feeling. Getting that Untamed win with a key charge in the last turn is a great feeling. I definitely feel like Untamed is the one where I've had the most fun playing it. It might not be the most winning house for me. I think Shadows is probably more of a factor in my big win situations, but I definitely feel like Untamed is the one that it's closest to my heart. What about you, Nick?
I think it's low. I was super confident, like 100% confident that my answer was going to be Logos. I feel like it's just the most consistently helpful, no matter what it is. Like, there's not a lot that stands out. I have my favorite cards, and I like, Library Access. I love Phase Shift a lot. I really love Phase Shift. I like Wild Wormhole a lot, kind of for the same reason. And then Time Traveler has become a new favorite of mine, and I'm hoping to get more decks with Time Traveler in it. So it can just kind of accompany other good decks as opposed to being kind of the focus like I think some people play it. But Sanctum is another really, really great one for me. It's just kind of been consistently helpful. Just I haven't really played a lot of, maybe that's where I come from, is I haven't had bad experiences with either of them. I'm sure they exist, but Sanctum has, like I was explaining earlier, Glorious View, Numquid the Fair, Virtuous Works is amazing. And I can't remember what it was. I don't know what the deck is. I probably sold it. But I remember one game I sat down and played with somebody, and it was just like is it Zookeeper that lets you reap and archive your opponent's card?
Yep. It is
That's
Zookeeper.
the guy.
Okay, it was just like that for Sanctum. And it was just like the most control-y, most badass, like, I don't know. I really enjoyed that play style. Just the opponent couldn't do anything. Their board was empty. Every turn I was throwing more Sanctum creatures down there, and I'd archive their biggest guy, their most useful guy, and I'd just throw mine at their other ones, and I really enjoyed that. So it's, I guess, if I had to pick a favorite, I'd pick Logos. I think I like Logos and Sanctum just about the same, and they're both at about 100%. A second question, kind of a segue question: do you have a least favorite house to play against?
Shadows.
Oh, really? Mine was Dis, probably for similar reasons, but Dis, I don't know. I won't answer yours for you, obviously. But Dis, the capturing is almost more devastating than the stealing, because I can compensate for, you've got an urchin, you're going to steal one. That's okay. I will, instead of attacking, I will reap for 2, so I will be up at 8, whatever, instead of leaving it at, or, I'll be up at 7 instead of 6. So when you play that urchin, you don't just steal 1. It's, if they're playing Dis, they've got, capture all, capture 3, capture 3, just stuff like that is more devastating to my personal play style from, from my experience. So Dis would definitely be my least favorite to play against. Or, God, I don't want to flip flop, but Shadows for bait and switch. It really fucks things up. But
that's
I think
the one reason I said Shadows is I think bait and switch is so powerful, it's so common, and it is a frustrating feeling to get bait and switch. It's an awesome feeling to bait and switch somebody, which is one of the true, sort of I guess what's the word I'm looking for? Paradoxes of Keyforge. bait and switch feels great when you're doing it, feels terrible when you get it done to you. And that's kind of the nature of it. Would I take the card out of the game? No. Do I hate it when it happens to me? Yes. And it's also one of those cards that just doesn't feel like it needs anything to, like, there's no strategy to it. It just happens. And I find that mildly frustrating. But yeah, that's the one reason I would say Shadows. Pretty much everybody else, I give it's a fair game. Even Dis with, the card, a fair game. But for some reason, Shadows gets me.
I would pick Dis over Shadows because, just for myself, because when you get that bait and switch out, it's done. It's done until they, cycle through their deck or whatever. Or, you'll see it coming back no matter what. Like once it's gone, you'll know when it's back. With Dis, they've got 6 Disc creatures in there, and each of them does something devastating to your Amber, even though it's just temporarily. Those 3 turns in a row when they can stop you from forging that key while they're beefing their shit up, like that can just so drastically alter the outcome of the game. And it has enough for me that Dis is the one that I kind of groan at when I see it coming toward me. Not that I've had a lot of losing experience with Dis over any of the other ones, I think, but it's certainly the most noticeable when you're getting screwed with.
Man, you guys have such good answers for that, and mine's going to be real simple. I hate Sanctum, and it's because of the armor.
Oh, yeah.
They every Sanctum Knight has armor, and thematically it makes sense, and I love the theme of it, and it's not, I don't hate to play it. I do enjoy Sanctum. It's probably one of my least favorite houses, but yeah, the armor game that they have is just so good, having just that extra bulk of HP to deal with, just to have to punch through.
With the exception of that, I can't remember the name of it. There's like one Sanctum that has Reap Capture 1. With the exception of that, I typically don't deal with Sanctum a lot. Like I just let them, unless they're building up this devastating board state and they're reaping for 5 each turn or something like that. Like if you have 3 Sanctum right there and you have a taunt in the middle and he gives 2 armor to each on the side and they're just these crazy beefy powerful walls, like we're not playing, I don't know where I'll just, for lack of a better term, I'll attack your face. Like I don't have to attack your creatures. Like I'll go for my own Amber.
Yeah.
So my experience with it has been, unless I have to deal with it, I just skip past it.
So, on the same topic of, since we're going with favorites and least favorites, real fast, Alex, what's your favorite and least favorite card from each house?
Oh gosh. You know what? I really, really dig Wild Wormhole from Logos, and I really, really actively have not ever been able to get. Let's see, where is it? Transposition Sandals. Like it just doesn't seem to work for me. It's not bad. It's just a thing that has been in decks that has kind of seemed like a dead card. Actually, you know what? Better one. The Research Smoko, the guy who's like a 2, and if he dies, you archive the top card of your deck. Like that one to me feels kind of underpowered for what he is and what he can do. I mean, archiving is good, but it doesn't feel like something that I totally want.
All right, we'll go down the list out for the quarter. How about Mars?
Oh gosh, Compod for favorite, and Key Abduction for least favorite.
Ow, I love Key Abduction. Sanctum.
Virtuous Works at number 1 for Sanctum. And let me think about this. I'm not a big fan of Oath of Poverty.
That's fair. Shadows.
Shadows is the same card. I both love and despise bait and switch.
That's what I expected off of both of you guys. Untamed. I'm guessing Key Charge number 1.
Chota Hazri,
number
1.
Key Charge with the body. I can't go wrong with that.
Yeah. And least favorite is, I don't know that I have a least favorite. Like, I really dig pretty much everything in that house. Like, there's nothing that strikes me as being real trash. I guess if I totally had to pick one, the Common Cold isn't my favorite.
All right, Rubnar.
Favorite Brobnar's Champions Challenge because it's a wacky one that doesn't come out that often. Least favorite one is I don't like Tireless Krokag.
And this.
Favorite discard is probably Arise. Arise is wild, man. It changes the game. Least favorite, you know what? I've actually had some good times with him, but I've also had some real bad times with him. Lord of the Pit.
Lord of the Pit. Lord of the Pit.
If he comes out late game, he can be a thing, but yeah.
Oh, no, I definitely agree. Lord of the Pit's definitely one of those that's just kind of either great or terrible at both times. All right, Nick, you're on the button now. We'll start off with Brobnar.
Okay, I'm not going to do my least favorite because I don't have enough of them to like actually have a real answer to any of them. Favorite Brobnar right now is Burn the Stockpile.
These?
The Terror, because I have a deck with 3 of them, and it's really, really, really satisfying. You either get 1 first turn if your opponent has no Amber, gain 2. Or if you have second turn, there have only been like twice when I've done it, but I've been able to play all 3 on my second turn and have 6 Amber.
Wow, that's crazy. Logos.
Library Access. Or Library Access is my favorite one. Time Traveler is the most fun I have with them right now, currently.
Mars?
I don't have a favorite Mars card, just because I haven't played enough to give a real answer.
I'm hurt. Sanctum.
It was a toss up between the two, but I would say it's tricky because I'll give 2 answers. I know it breaks lightning round, but Numquid the Fair, because it's really handy to have when you're just getting stomped, when you're looking like there's no hope because your opponent has 10 creatures out. If you're not as hopeless, Glorious Few is just as satisfying because you gain 9 Amber from that, 10 Amber. So if I had to pick one, I guess Numquid the Fair, because it saves you as opposed to just like boosting you up more.
Makes sense. Shadows?
Bait and Switch is a boring answer, so I won't give it, but it is my answer. Silvertooth, because it reminds me of Hearthstone. It's got charge. You play it and it's immediately ready, and I think that's really cool, and it's the only card like it.
And Untamed?
Witch of the Eye.
Real good answers all around. Oh man, it's my turn to go.
All right, let me run them through you for.
Oh boy,
best and worst. Mars.
Oh, Mars. Zookeeper definitely number 1. I'm gonna give a special shout out though to Ether Spider, because that thing it's so weird to play it, but if you have any way to like be able to do something with that captured Amber or a good way to protect it, it becomes devastating on the field.
Yeah, I'm changing my Mars answer. I'm picking both of those.
Least favorite's Phosphorus Stars, because it's going to the Shadow Realm, Yugi boy.
Okay, Shadows.
Shadows, definitely. I'm gonna say the Sting. For my favorite, again, because it just breaks the game crazy. Least favorite, I feel weird saying it because it is a better card, but I feel it's bad for the game itself. And that's Shadow Self. I hate seeing it. I hate playing it. It is not a bad. In fact, it's one of Shadow's best cards mechanically, but I just hate the mechanics. I think it's super clunky.
Untamed.
You skipped Sanctum, but that's okay because Sanctum's bad. Untamed, cooperative hunting is probably my favorite just because of how much craziness I'm able to do with it. Least favorite Untamed? That's actually kind of hard because I agree with you. I think same with Mars, that Untamed has just so many good options. I'm gonna go crazy here and say both Way of the Bear and Way of the Wolf. Yeah, they're upgrades. Yeah, upgrades are good because they just give something to the player. But gain an Amber, get Assault too. Gain an Amber, get Skirmish. I feel they're better cards I would want from the Untamed package in there. And even that saying like what's the one that only hits robots?
Curiosity.
Yeah, actually, I was going to say Curiosity.
Scientists.
Yeah, I'm gonna say Curiosity because it's so niche and just a silver bullet. I'm gonna say Curiosity. Those upgrades are
Okay.
real down the bottom list, though.
Brobnar.
Favorite Brobnar? I have the least amount of play with Brobnar, but I think I'm going to go in the opposite way of the upgrade. I'm going to go and say either Phoenix Heart or Blood of the Titans. Probably Blood of the Titans. Special shout out to Yo Mama Mastery, because Yo Mama's so tiny is the best flavor text on a keyword. Silas Croag as well as for my least favorite. I'm not able to. It's strong card, real good, able to punch everything. I put him down, and then he's immediately off the field because they'll just throw people at him to either clear their field so he goes away or get him off the field immediately.
Logos.
Definitely Reverse Time is my favorite. No question there. Least favorite? Dexter. Yeah, no, by far Dexter. I super feel is a dead card. The capture one's nice every once in a while, but the fact that he automatically goes on top of the deck really goes against my principle of rip through this deck as fast as I can.
Dis.
Yeah, I go back and forth on it, and I really shouldn't. It's pronounced Dis. Fair game. Again, it's one of those cards that kind of breaks the rules. And I think it's just one of the most fun cards to play. You drop it down, discard the top card of each of your decks, and gain Amber off of it. Like it's just silly. Least favorite, I would have to say Stealer of Souls. It's really good to play, and it's a really strong card on your side of the field. But like, again, purging a creature and gaining an Amber off it, I feel it's a super strong effect, and it's super swingy. Like it's definitely a card that you must punch in the face. It's one of those cards that has pseudo taunt, and I'm not a fan of its mechanic. If it just purged or just gained one, sure. The fact it does both, ow, too much pain.
Finally, Sanctum.
Man, there's a lot of bad cards here that I hate.
Oh wow.
I'm not a fan. Like I understand the power of Brobnar, even though I feel it's one of my worst things. Sanctum, I played enough with it to know that it's not my play style. So there's a lot of cards I could grab as just bad cards. Best card by far is Gatekeeper. The fact that your Amber cannot be stolen, 4 bodies, really decent, 1 armor, one of the best creatures. By far, Vault Keeper, best card that they have. Man, there's a lot of just cards that I don't like though in Sanctum. Just picking out one, I would probably throw Bureaucrat in the bottom of the list. I don't know. It's hard for me to just pick one off.
Really?
Yeah, you gain 2 when you pick it as an active house, but again, it's kind of got pseudo taunt where I want to punch in the face as soon as I can. Yeah, and I have been chained. If you asked me this 2 weeks ago, Epic Quest would have been the number one answer without a question, 100%. But Epic Quest, it's gotten some favor for me from some other things. Yeah, no, actually, I'm gonna say Doorstep to Heaven. I'm gonna solidly say Doorstep to Heaven. Because of the fact that it gives you an Amber first, it limits how many times I've been able to play it. And there's been a lot of times where I'm like, oh, Doorstep to Heaven would be fantastic right here if it didn't also punch me in the face at the exact same time. And I will 100% say that it is user error that because I've had Doorstep to Heaven hit on me and it's been devastating. So I'll 100% admit that it is user error on that card. But yeah, Doorstep to Heaven, definitely the worst of the bunch for me.
So I have a final topic, kind of a goofy one. You have a Magic FFG Richard Garfield wand that you can swing one time to alter a card or something surrounding it just in one way, one time. So you can make a card appear more or less. You can make a card totally go away. You can move a card from one house to another. Or you can change the rules surrounding a single card. What do you pick? And I'll give you guys some time to think about it. I'm going to give 2 answers. I'm going to break my own rule. I would make bait and switch a rare, or I guess it's a common. I would make it a rare, and I would make it actually rare, because we've talked about it before. The rarity that isn't. I don't feel like it's more than I don't know. I'm sure there's some rares that are actually rare and they appear very infrequently, like, Time Traveler and stuff. But I've also seen, a lot of the same rares over and over again, and the rares don't seem exceptionally great, and some of the commons seem really OP. I would make bait and switch a super rare card that, would make gameplay a little smoother, just kind of your day-to-day. You wouldn't expect, oh, he's got shadows, he's got bait and switch. I would also throw back to one of our other shows. I would make Wild Wormhole be able to pop any card in for any reason. Not just Cliffy Dragon. That's the big one that I like. I think it'd be cool to pop Cliffy Dragon out like that. It'd be a really cool move. But there's also other cards that are like, you must pay 3 to play this card. I think it'd be cool if it just popped it in and bypass that kind of stuff. But those would be my choices. Just as a goofy joke topic. But what about you guys?
I would switch lab work and sloppy lab work. Just sloppy lab work is objectively better than lab work to me, because you archive a card and you discard a card. So I feel like the name is kind of misleading. So lab work would be archive a card, discard a card. Sloppy lab work would be archive a card or discard a card.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Maybe I'll, for anyone that's upset about me harping on about the Wild Wormhole, which if you are, be quiet. If you're still mad about it, be quiet is my response to that. Not if you want to bitch about the other episode, go ahead, because I went hard on it. You can go hard on it too. But if you're mad that I just mentioned it right there, don't be. I would either make Wild Wormhole be able to pop any card in, with the exception of upgrades, or I would change the name of Wild Wormhole to something, tame conditional wormhole, where it doesn't just pop any card in, where it's actually, you do have to sit and think long and hard about this or that, whether it's allowed or not. I might change the name on that one, I guess, but not really. That's a dumb answer. I stand by what I said. What about you?
I'm gonna have the boring answer here, and there are definitely things that I don't necessarily like about the core set. But that being said, coming from other games where some cards are intentionally made weaker for, in other games it's rarity's sake, pack filler. In Hearthstone and Magic, they're, the cards that just are there for like popper games and just some pack filler kind of stuff. But I don't think I'd wave my wand yet. I don't think there has been anything grievous enough for me to go, nah, this needs to change, or I'm done with this game. Or even to the fact where like I'm so grump at this that, or like it breaks my immersion or anything like that. Like I think I saved my wand charge for another day. Maybe spend it and use a deck that I get to name, because I would love to have some custom named decks.
Oh, you're breaking all the rules. You got to change something.
I don't think that there is something that I really...
Well, do it. You do it for a selfish reason then. Move a card to Mars or something. You got to do something.
Oh, if I'm moving a card to Mars, it would be probably... actually, you know what? There is one card in Mars that I'm kind of about. And I think I would... Not necessarily a card itself. I think I would give Mars a bit of archive access. And if I have to be selfish, Key Abduction is a rare uncommon. I don't remember off the top of my head. It's an uncommon. But that being said, Mars doesn't have a good way to access Key Abduction well within its own house. Sample collection is really the one I can think of. Not Invasion Portal. What's the one that's Total Recall? That's what it is. You just furry ready friendly creature. You gain amber. You return all friendly creatures to your hand. And that's the one. That's the rare. Yeah, I guess I would give Mars a little bit more archive access because they're not as researchy as Logos is in theme, but they definitely should have a bit more access to like some research containers and a better incubation pod, something like that. But even then, I think I break the rules. That's super selfish of me. And that's just for as a Mars player. I think I wave the wand and ask for a deck with my name in it with 4 copies of Zookeeper. I'm happy there. Maybe a soft landing, so I get the first Zookeeper off the ground. But yeah, nope. I'm breaking the rules. Nothing. Nope. I'm good. Unless I can be absolutely selfish, then just make every card Mars. Every single card a Mars card.
All right. Good answers all around. Thank you guys for tuning in. A quick parting note. We have a tournament on Tuesday. We run them every Tuesday night at 8 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Central. We do 64-person Archon on the Crucible. It's a free tournament, free entry, and there's a physical prize. It's single elimination, so you go up the bracket, go up the tree. If you lose once, you're out. You're free to play with the other people that have lost to. But that way, it doesn't take forever, and then we don't have a bunch of people leaving. Like when you run Swiss, if somebody loses once, they take off. So we do Archon there, 64 people. It usually takes about, if you go all the way, it'll take you 2.5 hours, something like that. But that's about as long as you'd sit at your LGS, so not a huge deal.
What kind of prizes have you given out so far?
We've given away deck boxes. We've given away sets of like acrylic sets. We've given away card sleeves, stuff like that. We have a giant list of sponsors for like the foreseeable future, all from big people and small people, all cool stuff. I went out and personally got all these sponsors, so I didn't get any garbage. I know if you go on Etsy, and I'm not being mean, but there's some stuff on there that's kind of cheapish, things like that. And I made a point to make quality a priority. Like I kind of picked things as if they were my own prizes. Just, what would actually be useful, what's actually cool, what would you not be embarrassed to use, things like that. So it's all really, really good stuff. And it's even better coming up because it's not coming out of my pocket. It's all provided by them now. So that's Tuesday. You can sign up for it. The easiest way is to go to keyforgediscord.com. That takes you to our Keyforge, the keyforge.com's Discord, sorry. And from there, you can click on the announcements or the event announcements and see a link to our challenge. That's definitely the easiest way to get there. For anyone who's new or confused about it, you have to go to the challenge, whatever link you get to it from. You have to register for the event. And then an hour prior to the event, you'll get an email about it. So, keep your eyes peeled if you're confused. You have to go to that same challenge page and click a big orange button that says check in. It looks just like the register button, but it's check in. If you don't do that, you don't get to play. And that's a super important distinction to make because every single time, out of the 64 people that make it to be able to play, there's, 12 people, 15 people after that are confused why they're not playing right now. And it's not because they were on a wait list. It's because they didn't come and check in, or they popped into the Discord and said, check in. And that's not how you do it. It's really easy, but it's really strict. You got to go to challenge to sign up, and you have to go again an hour before and check in to the event. And then you just hang out in the Discord, and I post the rules and I say when to go. I shuffle the bracket, things like that. So if you're itching for more Keyforge in your life, or your local store doesn't support anything, or whatever the case is, this is a good way to play online, especially because there's no risk of net decking. All the decks are verified on the Discord. That's another thing you have to do. The rules are all on the Discord. You'll see it. You have to take a picture of it with your name written on a piece of paper. But all the decks are verified, so they're all ones that actually are owned by the people playing them. So it's kind of just like playing in person, maybe just a little less pressure because you don't have somebody looking at you, things like that. I kind of like that for my personal play. I'm not worried about any outside things. It's just kind of me, in my house, nobody breathing on me, no one, talking to me, doing anything like that. It's just, I can really focus on the game. So that's a nice aspect of it, but you should definitely try it out. It's great. Get some free stuff, get some experience and meet some cool people. Or even if you don't care about, playing in the tournament, our Discord's a really cool place. It's a good place to find kind of spur of the moment Crucible games. I find that when you ask in the Discord, you're getting a more realistic representation of, like people that you'd also be playing against at your store, as opposed to people just, using whatever decks, things like that. Yeah, you should swing on by. Also, check out the keyforge.com. I got a big schedule of articles ready to roll, getting posted all through the month. A couple other things. We've got a Facebook group called Keyforge Community. If you're looking for some people to chat with, that's a really cool place to do it. If you want to show off your deck or, whatever you want to do, Keyforge Community on Facebook, the group. I will post a link in the description. We've also got Keyforge Market, the Facebook group to buy, sell, and trade. That one's pretty self-explanatory. Buy decks, sell decks, trade decks, whatever. And then we've got the Keyforge Market subreddit. Again, buy, sell, trade. That's it. We have our Patreon, like I said at the beginning of the show. If you like what we do, go to patreon.com/thekeyforge and put $1 in our tip jar. It really helps. It helps us fund the servers and the prizes that we give out outside of the sponsorships and things like that. But thank you guys for listening, and we'll see you next week.